TVBS commentator Wenchi Yu sat down with U.S. Representative and Congresswoman Judy Chu on Wednesday, November 16th, to talk about the results of the midterm elections, her efforts in giving the AAPI community a louder voice, and her goals for the future of America.
How do you feel about the midterm outcomes? How concerned were you about the red wave and now relieved?
I was very concerned about the red wave. And in fact, as each day went on, I grew more and more elated because we kept the Senate, and the loss of our seats in the House was the lowest ever in many, many decades. So I just feel that the American people would not go for the extremism of Donald Trump.
And interestingly, last night, we saw that former President Trump announced his 2024 presidential run again. So why do you think he chose this timing for this announcement? And what do you think his announcement would do in terms of the impact on the U.S. politics and society, maybe over the next 2 years?
So I am not surprised at all that he announced right now. In reality, he is at fault for the Republican losses, but he doesn't want to acknowledge it. And instead, he wants to show that he's, well, king of the world. So that's why he announced his presidential campaign. And I think that it's going to be to Republicans' detriment that he is running.
As Chu is the chairwoman of KPAC, the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus, and has been an advocate for the AAPI community in the U.S. for some time, she also elaborated on the importance of amplifying the community's voices in America.
It is so important to have organization if we are to raise our voices. And there was a very, very long time where AAPIs were invisible in the U.S. Capitol, Asian American Pacific Islanders, that is. So we founded Aspire PAC, and over time this has grown so that we have made a difference. We've made a difference in swing states like Georgia. We've supported candidates, and that's how our numbers have grown in Congress. You see, there were 30,000 new AAPI voter registrations, but Biden won by 12,000 votes. And we know that 2/3 of the AAPI vote went to Biden. So I felt like the AAPI vote went from being marginalized to the margin of difference.
That was a good way of putting it, from invisible to literally the margin of winning an election or not. You know, during a time, I would say, you know, when Asian Americans, especially the last 2 to 3 years during the pandemic, felt really down. And you gave a really important speech at the Council on Foreign Relations about 2 years ago, how to talk about China because of the origin of COVID virus and the rising anti-Asian hate. What was the essence of your speech? And how have you talked to other members of Congress about this particular issue as the U.S.-China tensions rise? Because we saw this was also a factor in the midterm elections.
Absolutely was a factor in these elections. I gave that speech 2 years ago on how to talk about China because I was worried that the increased focus on China as an enemy of the U.S. would increase the atmosphere of xenophobia and encourage more violence. So we developed messaging guidance. And our whole point was that we said that you can have disagreements with the policies of China without casting aspersions against all Chinese people. Because by casting aspersions, then the American people would just have xenophobic actions occur against all people. So we talked about differentiating between the actions of the Chinese Communist Party versus the Chinese people in general, and making sure that we were aware of the xenophobic consequences of making certain very heightened statements against China and Chinese people.
Well, this is why it's so important that you do what you do. And, while the elections were a relief for, I think, to many, including yourself, but the Democrats still lost the House, as it seems. So what do you think you would like to accomplish, and what would be your priorities for the next 2 years?
Well, I am so happy that the Democrats will still hold the Senate, because then we can continue to confirm Biden's judges and also confirm cabinet secretaries. It makes a huge, huge difference. Also, the worst bills that are being proposed by the House and the Senate will be stopped. I will continue focusing my energy on protecting a woman's right to choose.
Chu will continue to work on issues like reinstating Roe v. Wade so that women can have access to safe abortion means, improving healthcare policies to provide Medicare and Medicaid to all, and clearing up the backlog on the U.S.'s immigration system, to name a few. Wenchi Yu, Vivian Xiao, TVBS World Taiwan.